Hey, good evening. I just want to say thank you for the historical. I want to say thank you to the Historical Society for inviting us tonight. And so I'm Michael Velazquez, Battalion Chief of Battalion 5. My office is in Agoura, and I'm responsible for Topanga, Malibu, Westlake, Calabasas, and Agoura. So it's one of the biggest battalions in our fire department. Geographically, it is a big battalion. We have 12 stations within the battalion, 13 captains. And with that, it leads into, I want to introduce your local fire guys from Fire Station 69. Right. Captain Mike Kitchens. Engineer DeWint, and Firefighter Carrillo here. And I'd like to take this time to acknowledge Captain Kitchen was a on-duty captain back in July for the Owen Fire up in Santa Maria. And I just want to make a note that he did a fantastic job tactically assigning resources, keeping that fire small, because we had resources from LA County, LA City, air resources coming in. Mike did a fantastic job assigning resources and setting up the objectives to keep that fire small. So we're lucky to have him. He did a great job. So I don't know the agenda quick tonight, but they said I have 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions you guys might have for us, being you don't get to see us too often. And we're here tonight, so please, if there's anything you have, questions, concerns, please.
Yeah, maybe you had mentioned earlier evacuations. Could you just talk a little bit?
Yeah, okay, I know.
Could I ask a question around that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we used to have 9 zones, very simple numbers.
Of TRAs, right?
Yeah, they used to be just called evacuation zones, and they were based upon the
automatic gate
old map books.
Right.
Anyway, so now we have new,
Called-
everybody's got them, and they're long numbers and they're crazy. What I'm wondering, because those became instrumental in terms of evacuation orders, evacuation warnings, you knew exactly where your zone was, it was easy, and it was between the street and that. And now, nobody knows. And we have a whole bunch of new demographic here in the canyon.
So the program is called Genesis. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, and it is a collaboration between the fire department and the sheriff's department, and it's a rolling reverse 911.
Yeah.
And during the fire, we identify between us, the fire department, with our cooperating, agency, the sheriff's department. We give them the zones that we feel should be evacuated based on the fire behavior and the wind. And we project out.
But what about the people that are in that zone? How do they know what zone they're in?
So that's a good question. And that's coming from, I think you have the captain of sheriff's, or she's coming to speak, correct? C2 will be here, and that's their baby. And I don't want to take their thunder, but she will articulate the plan to you guys, I think, really well. But it is based off numbers, geographical area, and the sheriff's department handles the reverse 911s to the community and to the citizens in those areas and let them evacuate. Now, with that said, we're talking about evacuations. And I'm going to go back to 2018 with the Woolsey Fire. There was a lot of complaints about people not being notified about the fire. It did cross the 101 freeway at around 3:34 in the morning. Okay, we were there. With that said, I think with all of you who live in this area, we all know the fire history of the area, the dangers, and we all know weather plays a big part. If you have a Santa Ana wind event, and we all know what it looks like by looking at the news, they have the palm trees laying 90 degrees, 45 degrees on their graphic on the TV, right? I would say it behooves you guys to have some situational awareness going on during a wind event. Okay, if there is a fire anywhere within this 20 or 30 mile radius to your north or to your east, you have to be aware of it and you have to keep tabs on it. Having some situational awareness. And you can't always rely on us to make those phone calls, okay? We know the ball gets dropped on communications, but with the news, social media, everything you guys have going on in Topanga Canyon with the T-CEP, I think it is possible for everyone to have some situational awareness when it comes to fires.
The problem was the electricity
Power was out.
So we had to depend on KNX 1770.
Just go sit in your car and listen to KNX.
Yeah, no,
They were giving out the info.
they were. And if I do believe we had a program, we offered to give out free radios, transistor radios that have weather updates 24/7 and you can use or so-so. Yeah.
There's only one problem with the radios, is that the reception in many parts of the canyon
Yeah,
is
I know.
really bad.
And we have the same problem, just so you know.
The second thing is, I was involved with the emergency guide when we first did it many years ago, when we had the 9 zones. And I know that-
2002.
And then I know that they just came out with a revised zone map.
Yeah, and that's what,
Okay, and the zone map I saw had 1 or 2 digits for the zone.
okay, what we're trying to do is not have a mass confusion, exodus, and evacuation. If you also remember, the Woolsey Fire was a big problem. Everyone tried to leave at the same time and go the same direction, and it clogged PCH. If you made a right instead of a left, you can get up to Oxnard with no problem, right? Everyone decided to make a left and go to Santa Monica, and it caused a problem. What's that? In the restaurants, in the hotels, yeah. And we're aware of that. And so with this new, it's the Genesis program, they want to do it sectionally. You know, we're project out pretty quickly and early when you should evacuate. And I think you guys also know that Topanga is going to turn into a one-way, right?
Maybe.
No, it's our responsibility now when we have a fire and it's established fire, we contact sheriffs and we implement that plan. Immediately. Yeah, we want it. No, we need that plan for 2 reasons. One, for your safety to get out and to get resources in.
But
Okay.
do you know which, I mean,
Yeah, I think the community house here is the demarcation line, the middle line. So if you live, we'll call it south or east, you go to PCH. If you're north of here, you go one way straight out to the valley. Okay. Now that's based on the fire behavior and where the fire is located, obviously.
for
Yeah.
Owens Fire, you would put people out that way.
Well, we're not utilizing Old Topanga. If you're referring back to 93.
I'm 93.
Yeah, the Owens Fire would have been an issue. Again, this is all, you know, in the perfect world based on fire behavior. We all have, there's room for adjustment and everything.
Now,
But-
what happens if we have a fire like we did in the late 70s, the early 80s, where we had the Bel Air fire on one end?
So you,
and
multiple
Malibu
fires,
fire
multiple
on
fires,
the
a
other
complex.
side, and we're
Yeah.
just praying for the wind not to change direction.
That was December, 1977?
Yeah, and folks, I can't predict that. I can't predict that fire. You know, we just do our best to have a plan. And I think the most important thing is to have a plan and for you folks to know the plan. So it's like our Ready, Set, Go program. It's a plan, you know. It's like when I talk to my captains, my engine companies, I always ask them what's their plan. Because we have to have a plan, okay?
I have a question about traffic. So it's so busy, it's just endless coming in and out. So in the event of fire, we can't even get out to leave.
That's where the sheriffs really will take control of the roadways and make it happen. Now, I need to also talk about if there's a fire in the middle of the day, I understand a lot of people trying to get into the canyon. That's a big problem, and I know it, and the residents know all the back ways and in and outs to get into the canyon. We know that. I know, we understand that. But that's another reason for the one-ways, you know, to kind of stop all the incoming traffic. And I know you want to get to your house. We all have pets. We have family, pets, belongings, horses. We totally understand that. But you got to have some discipline, too. We all have to have some discipline when it comes to a major fire, okay? So take that in consideration and why we're having one-way streets, too. It's for your safety, easy access, fire department resources in, and to keep a lot of people from coming in.
So there's a dividing point.
Yeah, and I think the community house here is the dividing line.
Well, this is about 6.5 miles up from the coast, and it's 3.5 miles to the summer.
Yeah, it is also, it will take longer though, you know, to get through the S-turns and all that. And most of the fires, if you guys realize, start up here than at the ocean. They don't go from the ocean this way, they mostly go from the ridge line to Santa Maria, or from the LA up and over into Cheney, the state park, Entrada, or the other side of Hillside, up high.
Yeah.
What about the Palisades fire? It came from Palisades, you know, was
Yeah, but that wasn't a Santa Ana wind event. That was preventing off the ocean. And if you look at it, it just went right up that canyon. We caught it at the ridgeline.
Did that surprise you that?
No, because of the fuel load and the wind. No, it didn't surprise us. But the good thing is we do a really good job with all our air resources to catch all the fires at the top of the ridges, as long as the wind's not blowing. We cannot, Mother Nature will beat us every time on the Santa Ana. Other normal fires without Santa Anas, 95% of the time we'll catch it at the ridgeline with all our resources.
I have a question. I don't know if I spoke to you or a different battalion chief, but
You spoke to Captain Kitchens.
When they shut us down a couple years ago, Thanksgiving night,
Yeah,
I
all
went
right.
up to get cell service at the top of Topanga there where the view was, and the wind was blowing at least 50 miles an hour, and people were smoking up there with their embers going. They were like 2 feet from the brush next to the mobile homes.
That's the human factor, yeah.
And
It's
it
humans.
is. So I took a lot of photographs because there's thousands of cigarettes up there, and sent them to the Santa Monica Restoration, and I sent them to Senator Stern, asking that when a high wind event happens, that they shut that area off. Because so many, I've been back up there and looked again, people still smoking during high wind. And it scares the bejesus out of me because it's so far north, and it would take the whole canyon out.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how we can work together. I've got all kinds of photographs.
Well, we don't own, so
I know you don't.
we don't have the authority because we don't own that land.
Get it, but who
That
does?
that'd be the MRSCA. Yeah, and then my bigger,
Are we accurate
yeah.
about it? Hopefully, but it's 2 years and it's still, there's no plan to just shut the darn gate.
Yeah, my bigger concern is the homeless people living on that land below the trailer park.
Yes.
That's my bigger concern, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
But again, we don't own that land, so we as the fire department have no authority. We talk to them, all the MRCA about it all the time. But oh yeah, we know about the homeless living down there. We know they cook.
I'm not even talking about the homeless. I'm
Well, they're a bigger concern than,
talking about that park there.
the homeless is your number one concern.
Call your supervisor's office.
Yeah.
They work directly with both the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and the state.
Yeah, I don't want to take it away. It's
And
gonna go on
the
forever.
department. Call them specifically.
Well, and maybe if some people in this group would call also. with
Here,
that-
you know what? I'll leave you my car.
Okay.
And people can.
Call the supervisor's office.
Hey, folks, I don't want to take the whole night up. You got a long night. I know everyone wants to get here at 9. I'm gonna leave my card up here, and you can contact me or call me. I'll reach out. But they're up here if you need it.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Better yet, the guys at 6-9s are always there for you guys. Go there anytime. Knock on their door. Captain Kitchen's more than happy to have a cup of coffee with you guys. So,
One more acknowledgement. My understanding when I was there is that you are all cross-trained in both medics and firefighting. Is that still the situation?
yeah, so I'll let Mike answer that. Go for it.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We have, especially here at our station, we also have paramedics. We have EMT firefighter and paramedic.
Right, right. And I wanted that to be acknowledged here in the community because we've got a lot of elderly and other things that happen.
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
And I have to say that you guys have been extraordinarily responsive to situations. And that's an aspect that we don't really always recognize. They're not just putting out fires, they're helping a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah.
Now, if you ever use the app Pulse Point, you see most of your calls are what they call medical emergency.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you again. I know you didn't plan on this, but thanks for doing it. Maybe we'll do another program the next year because there's a lot of interest for sure.
Yeah, get a hold of the station. They can always get a hold of me. I got my card.
Terrific. Thank you so much, guys. Our own Suzanne Guldimann from Topanga New Times. She's a board member. She writes so many articles on so many interesting things, just fantastic. And I'd like to introduce her, and she'll be our next speaker tonight.
There we go.
Speak close, it's supposed to sound better.
Okay. The landscape of the Santa Monica Mountains is shaped by fire. Sooner or later, wildfire impacts the lives of everyone and everything that calls these mountains home. All the evidence points to wildfires becoming more frequent and more destructive as development encroaches further into the wildland interface and climate change accelerates. But it's not a new phenomenon. A 1999 study of core samples taken from the Santa Barbara Channel found a record of regular fires for the past 600 years. It's a cycle that repeats over and over again. This is the 1956 wildfire. It's just one we'll be talking about today. Wildfire is a growing problem worldwide. Communities in area with high fire risk are increasingly vulnerable, and that includes the entire Santa Monica Mountains. That's why it's on this map here. This is the official very high fire hazard severity zone map. The red doesn't mean more intense. It means that's city controlled. The pink is unincorporated. This map is good, but it only shows part of the picture. This is the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area of maps from 1925 to 2018. The records were only really kept in detail beginning in 1925. You can see that Topanga's been very fortunate. We're angled a little bit away from the wind direction for the Santa Anas so that the main Topanga Canyon burns less frequently, and the most high fire risk area is the corridor between the Santa Susana Mountains, the Simi Hills, and Latigo and Corral Canyons in Malibu in the bright red there. The Santa Monica Mountains are a young mountain range. They're only about 8-9 million years old. They're rugged and steep. Those steep canyons, the east-west orientation, all of that makes it the perfect combination of things to accelerate fire. So does our Mediterranean climate and our fire-adapted plants. The Santa Anas hit the mountains and are funneled through our canyons, sucking up moisture and turning the mountains into a river of flame. Anyone who's lived here for any length of time is all too familiar with that. This map breaks it out by decades. You can see that the 60s were relatively calm. That's because it was a fairly wet decade. Our cycle of drought has a major effect on our wildfire cycle. The 50s were a decade with drought. It was a major fire season. Down at the bottom, the 1938, that red patch in the right corner, that was the Topanga Fire. It was a terribly destructive fire. It burned into Pacific Palisades, starting at Trippett Ranch. This is the kind of thing that gets left behind when a fire rips through. This is the Springs Fire that took place in June, not really a month we consider to be a fire month, in 2013. This is the 2007 Corral Fire, photographed from the Point Dume headlands. There was every indication that this fire was going to sweep on through and follow a path similar to Woolsey. Fortunately, it was controlled, but not before it did considerable damage. Almost, despite this long cycle of fires, almost all of those fires from 1925 on have been started by humans. A National Park Service study found that 97% of our wildfires have been started by humans. Arcing power lines are a number one cause, so is power equipment and automobiles, cigarettes, and arson. The automobile marked a major uptick in the number of wildfires because suddenly cars could get into places where before you had to travel on foot or by horse. This is a 1910 ad for the electric Duro car. It boasts that you can ride it up Topanga Canyon. Cars could get in easily enough. Firefighters, not so much. And remember those good old days when every car was equipped with one of those neat little things you poked in that would heat up so you could light a cigarette in the ashtrays? As smoking has decreased, the number of cigarette-started fires has decreased, but unfortunately, as we encroach into the urban-wildland interface and our aging electrical system continues to age, other causes of fire have supplanted that. The first major headline-grabbing fire in the Santa Monica Mountains was the 1903 Malibu Rancho fire. It burned millionaire Malibu owner Frederick Hastings Ringe's house down and burned through a lot of the ranch. It did not burn the entire ranch the way the LA Times article here overstates, but it was very damaging. And this was the front line of defense for it. This is a picture from the 1920s, but the only tools they had were hand tools, shovels, and axes. And that didn't really change. This is the 1938 Topanga Fire. Los Angeles fire crews still had to pretty much work with hand tools. There's an after-action report by the chief engineer lamenting that they only had 2 bulldozers in the entire LA County Fire Department. They needed more. They borrowed some from the Water and Power Department. They rented them from contractors. They were geared for putting out fires in houses, but not so much for the wildland fires that were becoming more prevalent. The 1938 fire ignited in Trippett Ranch. The caretaker dumped some ashes out the door. They were still hot. They caught the hillside on fire. There's a lovely pond there that was dug partially to provide fire suppression, but with the Santa Ana winds, that fire ripped out of control and was burning into Pacific Palisades before anyone could do anything about it. This is the Fraser family, James Fraser. They were one of the families that evacuated. Hundreds of homes burned. This is all that was left after the fire came through. The fire burned all the way down to the coast at Castle Rock, where there were beach cottages and a fancy castle-themed restaurant. This is a eerie and wonderful but horrifying picture of bystanders watching. There wasn't much that anyone could do. The firefighters did have one tool that they hadn't had in 1903, and that was the telephone, but it didn't work the way it was supposed to in this case. It was out of order up at the Temescal Peak fire outlook, and the man who was sent up to fix the phone line is the one who reported the fire. This is Castle Rock the next morning, a depressing sight. 10 years later, the fire department was still campaigning to get dedicated phone lines. It was party lines in those days. They were shared by multiple homes and businesses and by the fire department too. This ad begs people to be considerate and not blather away while people were having emergencies. Things were better by 1948. This is the 1948 fire. Communications were better. 2,000 people were evacuated ahead of the fire. We lost 25 homes in Topanga. These were some of the evacuees gathered and waiting for word. You can see Lee's hitching post in the background there. By 1956, there were better tools, more water tankers, just a bigger fire department, but this was a massive fire. It broke out on Christmas Eve. It's the Sherwood-Newton fire. It was kind of a confluence of a couple of blazes that came together. It burned all the way to the ocean at Broad Beach. It was bitter cold. Fire crews were being treated for hypothermia. They were facing houses in places where there hadn't been houses before. This woman is trying to control things with a garden hose, and that's a really frightening image. On the ridgelines, it was snowing. It's just so strange, but the wind was blowing, so it didn't matter that it was snowing. The wind propelled this fire down to the coast. By 1961, this is the Bel Air fire. We had air support, fixed-wing air support. That was a huge help, but we still lost 400 houses, more than 400 houses. It was a catastrophic fire. It changed how fire insurance was handled. It was the first time that major insurers were pulling out of the California market because of the level of devastation. This is the 1978 fire, and it burned the same path as 1956. This is all that was left of the home of Malibu's first elected mayor, the late Walt Keller. They rebuilt, and he went on to campaign for cityhood. One of the things that the people of Malibu wanted was more control over their own destiny and more support for disasters of this type. This one's 1984, a fire so big you could see it from Santa Monica. It lit up the side of the Santa Monica Bay, and there were smaller fires too. If your home is the one being threatened by a smaller fire, it doesn't matter that it's not an epic disaster, it's personal and affecting you. The little green area there is the 1977 Topanga Fire. The red at the bottom is the 1973 Trippet Fire. Those were very hot, very fast fires that were very scary for people who were living here at the time. And the blue patch on the other side is the Pasadena Fire of 1978. And that brings us to 1993. My colleague Scott King is going to be talking more about that, but I did want to touch onto it. It was our first really big modern fire with full air support and a lot of mutual aid that came in. It couldn't have happened at a worse time. The Green Meadow Fire at the northern end of our mountain range broke out the same day. There were fires all over the Southland, including the Laguna Fire just days earlier that burned 400 houses in Orange County. Mutual aid was a little thin on the ground. A lot of residents were facing the decision to stay and try and save their homes or to leave. It was just a hellacious firestorm with a 15-mile-long fire line that stretched all the way from the back of Fernwood to west of Pepperdine University in Malibu. This is the LA Times headline. You can see it says, Southland Firestorm Week 2, because there was so much fire activity, and that gives you a good idea of just how long that fire line is. How do you save houses? What do you prioritize when you're dealing with a fire of that magnitude? And that's just what we dealt with 5 years ago when the Woolsey Fire swept through, burning 50% of the Santa Monica Mountains and nearly 100,000 acres. It broke out here at the old Santa Susana Field Laboratory. The Edison equipment there was originally built to accommodate the Department of Energy's nuclear power plants. They had experimental package plants there that had been decommissioned and removed and decontaminated, we hope. But this fire broke out the same day as the Hill Fire broke out up by Camarillo. The powers that be decided that the Hill Fire was the bigger risk and assigned 400 firefighters to it. We got less than 200 on the Woolsey Fire. I don't think it would have mattered. It was such a big fire. It moved so fast and covered so much ground. It wouldn't have made a difference. There was no stopping it on the way to the ocean. On November 9th, 2018, the Woolsey Fire roared into Malibu at 9:38 a.m. This was the view from our backyard on Point Doom. This is looking towards Latigo and Corral. At 11:13 a.m., that was the view down the end of the street. The fire had moved past Canaan Doom Road and was headed towards Malibu West and Malibu Park. And also, though we didn't know it then, onto Point Doom, which hadn't burned since about 1936, I believe, when there were hardly any buildings there. The little polka dots here are oak and walnut trees. That's a 200-foot at least jet of flame. It was like looking at a volcano. I've seen a lot of fires. I grew up here. My dad, he evacuated for the 1970 Wright fire. I was 2 years old. I remember he put me on his shoulders and pointed to the sky where it was orange, and we all piled into the car and drove down to Zuma to wait for a few hours to see if it was safe to go home. This wasn't that kind of fire. This is the view from the other side of the mountain. That's the Trancas Shopping Center in the foreground, and Malibu Park on the right, and Malibu West on the left, and just a fire tornado. That's how people described it. It picked up garbage cans and hurled them hundreds of feet. It ripped roofs off houses. It was truly like something no one had ever seen before. By 11:24 a.m., we were surrounded by flame. This is looking south. It should be looking out towards the ocean. There should not be flame on that side of things, but the fire had already crossed over onto Point Doom and was burning to the sea at westward. We left at 2:31. I didn't leave earlier. I had my 87-year-old mom, an elderly dog, and 2 cats, and PCH was jammed to the gills. No one was moving. I was afraid if we left, we might be overrun by fire, and I judged it was safer to stay where we were. We'd had a better chance than trying to get out of the car and run for it with my my fragile cargo there. This is what we saw driving out of our neighborhood. I did not expect to ever see our house again. I stopped at Corral to look back. You can't see Point Doom here. It's completely covered in black smoke, which is a bad sign. Black smoke is a very bad sign. I've seen a lot of fires. I've never seen one like that. I've never been so happy to leave anywhere in my life. My neighbors stayed behind. This photo was taken by John Mazza of Mace Stanley. This is the ravine between our houses. And this is the intersection of Pacific Coast Highway. And that's our street sign. They stayed and fought the fire for 3 days, putting out smolders, putting out embers, spraying water on burning railroad ties and palm trees. I wasn't able to come back until we got the all clear. I used my press pass to come back through at the earliest possible time, driving through Canaan. It looked like Mordor. Truly, this was, look at this, there's a power pole that's just kind of hanging from the lines there. There were lines down everywhere. That was the only bit of green I saw on the entire trip through. There wasn't a shred of vegetation anywhere. The fire burned all the way down to the ocean in several places. The place where I stopped to take that picture at Corral was burning a few hours later. This is Leo Carrillo, several miles up the coast. This is my street. Some houses survived, some didn't. The fire burned to within 200 feet of my house. I don't know. I'm just blessed that I had a home to come back to. Neighbors came together to save houses. There was just no way there was enough fire department support. People couldn't get in. They couldn't get ahead of the fire line. The people who stayed were entirely on their own. You think, when the disaster is over, that the disaster is over, but it's not. The aftermath is still going on. Houses were burnt, cars were burnt. This house survived, the car didn't. I haven't shared these with anyone. I took 10,000 pictures during that period, and initially I didn't want to publish the ones of burned out houses, but I think it's important to remember what happened and how it could happen to any of us. This was the home of a childhood friend of my brother's. He remembers sitting at that fireplace on winter nights. And the bones, there were bones of animals all over the hills in the Santa Monica Mountains. This is the Woolsey Fire burn scar. It's enormous. It's half of the Santa Monica Mountains. You can see on the right where it crossed over Malibu Canyon. They took a big stand there, dropped a lot of Phos-Chek. It did not reach Topanga. It could have. It really could have. We could have lost Topanga too, thank the powers that be that we didn't. The reconstruction started almost at once. There were miles and miles of power poles, power lines, culverts, guardrails, pavement, signs, lights. Malibu became a construction zone, a massive one. It's still a construction zone. Nature began to recover a lot faster than the humans did. I found this Dudleya growing out of a scorched and blackened hillside just days after being allowed back in. The rains came early that year. Thank goodness for that. They brought greenery back. They laid the dust down because everything was covered in ashes and dust, and you'd clean it up and it would be back again the second the wind came up. Even Mordor started to go back to being beautiful and green again in a remarkably short period of time. This was a truly massive disaster, and 5 years later, we're still putting one foot in front of the other to move on from it. It's the scars are fading from the landscape. I think maybe the scars are fading from people's psyche, but many houses are still in the process of being rebuilt. Many neighborhoods, the character has been completely changed because of the loss of so many houses. More than 1,600 structures burned, many of them residences. I'm presenting this because we need to remember as we go forward. And, there's nobody here who remembers the 1903 fire. There's only a few people left who remember the 1938 fire. 85 years from now, some other person may be standing up before the Topanga Historical Society and giving a talk, and the Woolsey Fire will just be a footnote. But it's important to be prepared and to know that it can happen to any of us, that we're all at risk for this. We can be resilient, but we need to be prepared. Just today, we received this wonderful photo of Larry Anderson. This is 1949, and he was up here. His father was the fire chief for many years in Topanga. He was up here replanting the grass for the community center after the 1948 fire, and it went perfectly with the quote that I chose to end this presentation. What I knew was that the earth underneath was alive, and that by tomorrow, certainly by the day after, it would all be green again. Norman Maclean, A River Runs Through It, and other stories. In ending, I would like to urge everyone to have an evacuation plan if you have elderly family members, special needs family members, animals. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you have carriers and crates for animals. If you have horses that you're You've got all the equipment you need to get your horses safely out. You have a place to bring them, that your trailer has brakes that work, and that the floorboards aren't rotted, because we can replace things, we can't replace lives. And the most important thing is that we get through it. As a community, we're very strong together, but we need to work together to make sure that everybody's safe and that nobody gets left behind in a situation like this. Scott King is going to talk about staying behind, and that will be our next part of the presentation. If you could hold your questions until we're both done, that would be great. And give me a moment to switch to our other presentation.
Go to the opening.
Oh, crap. Hang on.
Yeah, go to the top there.
Did it defaulted? I'm sorry. Sorry.
How can I,
So these.
will that go to my opening? Okay, I was asked to talk a little bit about Arson Watch before I go. There is a organization called Arson Watch here in Topanga, also Malibu, also a little bit in up in Box Canyon area. I think there's a couple people up there. Basically, we're a group, sheriff volunteers. We drive around on prescribed routes during red flag days in our vehicles, and we look for various possible fire hazards, people, doing things that are hazardous, smoking in the weeds, that kind of thing. That was mentioned earlier. And we need people. And so if anybody would like to help keep the community safe, arsonwatch.com, that's the website, and you can look there, and it will be obvious how to join. I think there's a tab called Join. Anyway, with that, when I moved here in '86, we sought the expertise of some of the old timers around, and I remembered two pieces of wisdom when I asked about what to do about fire. One that really stuck with me was, if the wind blows, you go. If the wind doesn't blow, you stay. And another one was, if you stay, be prepared for no electricity, no water, and nobody to help you. And the only thing you can do is just fill every vessel you have with water and put towels in it, gunny sacks, whatever you got, blankets, and be prepared to put out the spots. And so, armed with that, on the morning of the 2nd of November, 1993, I was lucky to have an oddball, weird job up on Artique. Most of my work was out of the canyon at that time, rebuilding a deck. And I was up there working on this thing, and my wife at the time came up with some papers to sign. We were working on refinancing our house, and we signed the papers, and she went up the street to turn around, came back down, and said, "Have you seen that?" And she looked up there to the northwest and showed me there was a big column of smoke. And I had noticed earlier in the day that I had not seen wind like that in quite some time, and really was hoping that a fire would not start. And here was a fire starting, but it was blowing kind of out toward the ocean and away from our house. And I thought, well, I got time. I'll just go ahead and finish up the deck here, and then I'll get on home. So that I did, and when I got down here to Old Canyon around the post office, there was a big horse trailer crossed up. There was people driving around stuck, and they were trying to turn around, and it was just everything I could do to get through them up to my house. And I should also mention, when I was up at Artique, and with that column of smoke going up there were nannies running up and down the street with babies, screaming. I kid you not. It was the weirdest situation. So anyway, got to the house, and armed with our knowledge of no water, no electricity, and nobody to help, we started filling all of our trash cans with water and stuff and got ready. But we also, and the point of this picture here, loaded up the truck and the car. And I don't want any emails about all this firewood here. I understand the irony. It was, yeah. Anyway, so we were ready to evacuate, but there was no wind. And so, I'm going to, excuse me for just a second here. So we prepared to stay. There was no wind, remember? No wind, you stay. So we said, okay. And there was no fire visible, no smoke that we could see from our house. And so we just prepped. We cleared everything away that we could. We loaded up the cars in case we had to go. And as night fell, we got ready to go. We didn't know what we were going to find. And we turned on the TV, and the TV showed Armageddon. TV showed wind up on Saddle Peak blowing 70 miles an hour, mayhem, horses running up and down the street, fire trucks. And it said, the guy on the TV said, all of Fernwood is burned. Nothing's left. So we learned about the accuracy of TV news. And we went outside and looked around, and no wind, no fire, no smell of smoke, no nothing. And we thought, oh, okay, well, feel better now. Went back in, kept watching TV. And waiting for whatever was going to happen. Around 10 p.m., we heard the sound of what sounded like a truck. Now, remember that everybody had gone. There was actually cops going up and down the street and with bullhorns telling everybody to get out. And when we heard them coming, we would hide because we wanted to be the ones to decide and not them what we would do. And at one point, a cop showed up in the driveway, and I was out putting stuff in the truck. He said, you got to go. There's a fire coming. And I thought, oh, no, it's over. He's going to follow us out, and we can't stay. And so I just went crazy on him. I said, okay, man, okay, hey, we're going. My wife's inside. We're getting the more stuff. We got to get out of here. The fire's coming. We're going. And the cop bought it, and he split. So anyway, we were at that point on our own. So not too fast forward, and about 10 p.m., it's been dark for hours now. Remember, November, like around this time of year. We hear what sounded like a truck coming up the street. You know, what the hell is this? Because nobody's around. We go outside, and up the street comes a fire truck. And we're going, what the hell? And then another one. And then another one. And then another one. 5 fire trucks in all on our street. And we thought, wow, we have died and gone to heaven here. And we got to talking to the guys, and they wondered if we were crazy. They go, what are you guys doing here? And their eyes are as big as dinner plates because they're from Orange County. And I'm going to take my Arson Watch jacket off now. Horseshoe. Yeah, I should have said that at the beginning. Horseshoe Drive. It's about a mile up Fernwood from T-CEP. And so up come these guys. It's a strike team from Orange County. These guys here. And so we had a chat. They wanted to know if we were crazy, if we were going to panic and have to go, in which case they would have to let us go. And we got it all straight, who's who and what's what. We said, no, we're going to stay. And we convinced them that we had some valuable local intelligence, which was sorely lacking. I'd worked on a lot of houses in the neighborhood, and I knew where power panels were, propane tanks, front doors, back doors, light switches, refrigerators that had food in them. And so they said, all right, you guys are in with us.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Okay, go, Neil.
How did those guys finally turn around on your screen?
Well, they can turn around at the top, but yeah, it's a good question. I don't remember the actual answer to that, but I would imagine either they turned around, there was a pretty wide dirt area just down below us that they could have turned around and backed up. I don't remember, honestly, but
Slept on the floor.
say what?
People that, when the fire department was there, they slept on the floor, they never left.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about sleeping. We'll get there. And so anyway, here's the guys. This is my driveway. House is over down there. Garage is over there. So they are with us. And once they were convinced that we were with them and we weren't crazy, they said, all right, you guys are one of us. You guys are part of us. And they gave us turnouts and helmets and gloves. And they taught us how to use their equipment. Boy, I was really impressed with that fog nozzle. I'll tell you what. I thought I pulled that thing open and it gave a spray of water that was about 180 degrees wide, and thought, well, you know, we're good to go here. Nothing's gonna happen. Of course, that's a little naive, but it felt good anyway. So we found out some stuff, like about the water system. Our hydrant, oh, that was another thing that we told them. We got a fire hydrant right there in our driveway. And so they said, well, we'll park in your driveway then. So I said, great. And we got a house, we got telephones, we have food, we have a bathroom. And so our fire hydrant had 250 PSI of pressure, and the next hydrant down the street was dry. So you find these things out in these kind of events. So as the night went on, a glow started to appear. I don't really have a picture of that. A glow started to appear on a hill up behind Doug and Elaine Hansen's house. And remember, there's still no wind. I mean, there's almost dead calm. The fire came over the top of the hill, crested the hill about 3 in the morning, and backed slowly down the hill. And it took about 12 hours to get to the bottom in this little ravine that was in back of the Hansons' house. Now and then a big bush would go up, and big flame, and we could feel the heat 600 feet away, and that got our attention, that you don't want to be very close to any of this stuff. So you can see as the fire came down, this is Doug Hansen's garage, Doug and Elaine Hansen's garage right there, the old garage, and this is the hill up behind, and here comes the fire, and it's still night at this point.
Is this the second or third day?
Second day. Well, this was, Wednesday morning. So fire... Not yet. We'll get there. So sometime in the night, this bus brought a bunch of smoke jumpers in, and these guys were amazing, and more on them also. But, you know, the firefighters, they do this a lot, and they bivouacked around their engine, and we stayed awake. We stayed awake 39 hours straight, only taking brief naps. And our lips peeled from the lack of sleep and the smoke and the dryness. We raided our neighbors' kitchens and our own and made these guys food. These guys had no food. They had no food and they had no maps, is what we were told. And so they were eating MREs, they were eating cookies, whatever people gave them, whatever they had on their truck. So anyway, the fire continued to come down that hill. And at one point, there was a radio car down the street, a kid in there with a bunch of radios, and I said, you know, what usually happens is the wind reverses, and it starts blowing in from the west, and we got little fire in this ravine here now. If you can convince your guys to bring in some big air support, knock this thing down, we won't have a big fire later. He thought it was a great idea, could not get him to do it. There was no air support in there. Smoke jumpers were down there doing what they could. We heard the moan of chainsaws all day long. And then the wind did shift. And you can see the smoke. See the smoke going up. Now this is, west is that way, and east is that way, and so the wind has shifted. Now the smoke is coming up over the top of us, and now we had a problem, because this fire was getting big, and it was blowing down toward Fernwood, and there were smoke jumper guys in there, and doing what they could do, but they needed air support. And finally, the air support did come. And between the air support and the smoke jumpers, they saved Fernwood, essentially, in my opinion, anyway.
That was Chief Nelson, that was the fire battalion chief on that.
Cool. Well, I'm very grateful. Meanwhile, as the fire went down that way into Fernwood, this is looking more southwest. And this is something you never want to see. You never want to see the smoke coming over the top of you, because the next thing is fires coming onto you. And we had one of our strike team crews up there. There's a dirt road that goes up above and back. I know it's kind of hard because you don't know where I live, I guess. But anyway, there was a dirt road up there. They were able to hold the fire there along with some more air support. And then it got real bad. And it went down. So that's that same house. It's kind of the same picture. The fire went then down to the south and went down through Cary Lane. And at this point, we thought that our friends Rod and Linda, and many of you guys probably know them, we thought their house was gone. We didn't know that that the smoke jumpers and everybody were doing such a good job down there. Meanwhile, it's going down toward Cary Lane. There was a guy on Stites named Terry that had a big horse property there. And there was a strike team that was driving around looking for a place to make a stand down in that area. And Terry was there, and he had a big cleared area, and he too had a house and was able to give them an operational base. And so they chose to go down there. They had 5 fire engines in their crews to save 9 houses on Stites, which they did. So yet another case where somebody being home made a big difference in what the outcome of the fire was, or could have been. You don't know what would have happened, but you can kind of guess. And I know that some of this is controversial, and people will have differing opinions. I just want to make it clear that this is my experience and my ideas on this thing, and everybody's got to make their own decisions on what to do. It's all tactical. Remember, there was no wind pretty much the whole time, except when it was blowing from the west, and that's when it got bad. So this all kind of calmed down, but the fire went down and jumped across Topanga Boulevard and burned up the other side. I don't have a picture of that, but you can see this burn scar here. This guy's putting out some spots over there. So it burned up into this area here and came up against an old burn scar from, I think, 76 fire, and really slowed it down up there. You can't really see it here, but that's State Park, yeah. This is Parker Mesa Overlook Trail.
It came all the way down to right behind the lumberyard and came down within a quarter mile of the lumberyard before they stopped.
Okay, I never knew exactly where it jumped. I figured it was somewhere down below. I mean, I knew it was down below the lumberyard, but yeah, okay.
We stayed home too, and we were told to evacuate when that happened. We're on Oakwood,
Uh-huh.
the bike shop. So they were we didn't leave, but they were trying to evacuate all the way up there.
Well, yeah, that's,
But it started coming back.
So they were evacuating the east side of the boulevard in preparation for continuing through, after it jumped through State Park and up to the hillside in that area.
right.
The west side of the boulevard was not evacuated.
We were told to evacuate, we're on the west.
Yeah, well, we were obviously told earlier, but then everybody left us alone. I mean, once we got behind the lines, you know,
For a minute.
yeah,
That was a very short thing. Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
The other thing that was really great that was happening, there were a lot of horse trailers that came up. We got our horses out, and we had rescued the horse that got hit by the fire truck, and that was a Arabian chestnut mare, and we had to put her down, but we got all our horses out, and that was amazing how people came up and got all our horses.
Yeah, it's horses just, I've got 2 cats, and that's scary enough. By the way, when we stayed, I didn't have any animals. And I was also 30 years younger, so made a difference.
Know is sometimes your horse won't load to have some kind of tranquilizer available.
Yep.
if you need it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Neil, that was it. Neil says not just for the horse. That's a good point. So we watched a guy drive a D9, which is like the biggest Caterpillar bulldozer they make. This is, again, Parker Mesa Overlook Trail, and he came up the back side of that, and I've been on this trail. I know what it looks like back over there. And he drove that damn dozer down this trail, and we watched it through our living room. I mean, those guys really have a pair, I'll tell you what. It doesn't look anywhere near as gnarly as it in the picture as it was as we watched it happen. So back to our little ravine behind our house there. Basically, they held the fire here. My house is behind the camera. Doug and Elaine Hansen's house is over here. And here's some of the guys over here. There's some guys there. And so we were very happy to find out that our friends and the rest of Fernwood did not burn. There was a little shed up in this area that did burn. Maybe it was here. But that's the only structure around that I know of around us that burned. Yeah, I knew Dorothy Reich's house burned, I believe. And that's up on Saddle Peak. Yeah. Came right up to the Driscolls, yeah. So, so now starts the air show. Actually, the air show's been going on, but it really got interesting. I think I had yeah. I mean, I don't have too many pictures of the fixed wing. That's a DC-7. There was a lot of C-130s, several different rotorcraft helicopter vehicles, Hueys and Erickson Sky Cranes. And so there's these guys with the buckets and the Chinooks. And this was really fun because this was happening right next to us. I actually got hit with one. This looks like a little spray coming out of there. If you get hit by a drop coming out of there, I got hit right on the top of my head. It felt like a brick. There's really large amounts of water coming out of there. And one guy, and it might have been this guy here, was able to get the bucket swinging in a circle around a hot spot. And then he would take off and pull the bucket just as it was running out of water right across the middle of the hot spot and put it out. And we watched this guy do this over and over again. And that was very impressive. Could have been that guy. Could have been that guy. Anyway, one of these guys. Smoke jumpers are quite the bunch. You can't see it. Whoops, what happened here? Right there is a campfire. So these guys would have these campfires, and they'd cook their food and hang out, and they look like just the gnarliest bunch. These guys parachute into fires deep in the forest, and their gear comes down on a different parachute. They get their gear, chainsaws, fuel, the rest of it, and they fight the fire for 4 or 5 days, and then they pack it all out. That's what these guys do. So this was a pretty easy thing for them. Neil.
Scott, there was just a special big 4-page feature in the New York Times last week about the smoke jumpers.
Oh, cool.
So if you go to their website, you can see it.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I want to lift up, my daughter hauled 2 miles, over 2 miles on the Palisades fire hose.
All right.
So she was up there on that one.
So what was I going to say about the smoke jumpers? So this is them in front of Doug. Is Doug here? Oh, there he is. So, Doug, I thought you might get a kick out of some of these pictures. Okay. So, you didn't know you had a B&B, did you? Anyway, these guys sacked out whenever, wherever. I opened up my shop so they could fix their chainsaws. Got a chainsaw right in the foreground here. Yeah, yeah. So speaking of feeding, this is the artist formerly known as Barb, now Anahita, that I was married to at the time, and we made these guys food. They didn't have any food, as I mentioned, and I'm making them something. I don't know, it looks pretty gnarly, but I guess it tasted good. It might be French toast, I don't know. Anyway. And we got very little sleep, but every once in a while, I did go down for a quick nap, never able to really sleep. We were always on, this kind of an experience is, for me, once in a lifetime. 30 years later, I haven't had anything like this since. I kind of don't need to. But I gotta say, it was one of the, maybe the richest, well, it was one of the richest experiences of my life. And, why did we stay? We were building our house by hand ourselves. So yeah, we wanted to save that. But it was more than that. It was to engage with this, just the raw energy and spirit. It doesn't get any more real and any more basic than in a situation like this. And the bonds we formed with the firemen and the bonds we formed with each other and with the fire and with the land. It's just, I don't have words to describe it, but it was just an amazing, rich experience. Every moment mattered. Wasted motions were few. And the firemen told us that they were so grateful that we were there. These guys are up from Orange County, right? City. They come up into this place with overhanging trees and twisty roads with no maps. They don't really know where they are. They just got deployed up here. And they run into somebody with all this local intelligence, which they did not have. We didn't have the firefighting equipment and expertise that they had. And so together we made a great team. And food, of course, and a home base and a bathroom and all the rest of it that they need. We received just hundreds of phone calls from people wishing us well, which was also amazing. I heard from people that I hadn't heard from in years. And we also heard from a lot of people that really wanted us to get the hell out of there. They thought we were crazy. And I finally had to tell them, look, I appreciate your input. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I had to hang up on a couple of them. They got really too insistent. So anyway, Barb made T-shirts back then, gave one of the guys one of her shirts. And they gave me this shirt, which you can see. You can see my shirt when we turn the lights back on. And I think this sums it up, if you can read that. That was Linda and Rod's house. Linda Bullheist, the artist. I think some of you know her. Well, she and Rod lived there. We thought their house was gone for sure. We knew that was the highest house when that fire went down, and it came from behind the camera right down. And you can see this is all burned right here. And the house is okay. Thanks to the smoke jumpers and the air support. And so that's what I got. That's my story of the fire in '93. And remember that, thank you. Yeah, it was quite the experience. And so if you guys got any comments or questions, happy to take them.
Just turn on the lights.
Okay. Chantal, oh, yeah, great. I love it. So here's my shirt.
Yeah.
So Scott.
Yes, Neil.
What a great first person narrative. I was the first car they wouldn't let up the canyon. I was stuck there with Murray. They didn't have any food. They would let me go to George's, the market there. But the CHP, this is something you don't know, They had teddy bears in the trunks
Teddy bears.
that they hand out to the children to calm them down. So
Wow.
all the guy could do was give Murray a teddy bear.
Well, there's all kinds of things that I could have said and didn't, just in the interest of time and brevity. But one of the things that happened was somebody got so crazy with the cops actually pulled a gun on them. I wrote a song about this fire, and that's in the song. It didn't make it into tonight's presentation, but yeah.
How much we bars from? Yes, sir.
How much what?
Can you sing it for us?
No, I need a guitar. And I need to have sung it sometime in the last 10 years.
Would you, at the age that you are now, would you make the same choice to stay?
Well, the thing is that LA County firefighting capability is vastly improved. Vastly improved. I mean, I didn't get in, I don't even really know too much about the I heard there was communication snafus all over the place. I'm not privy to the details, so I didn't get into that. We, of course, have 69 Bravo, which is right above my house. I now have 2 cats, and I am 30 years older, and the answer is probably not. But, it's a different, it's a totally tactical situation. I haven't left. I left for Woolsey. I didn't leave for the one that was over here in May with all the fog, whatever that one was called. So again, it's tactical. I can't tell you. You got to tell me, where's the fire? What's the wind? What's the weather been like? Et cetera, et cetera. But I'm way less inclined now to stay than I was.
And we had just, in the 94 fire, it was just one day of extreme winds.
Yeah.
I mean, Woolsey was going on for almost
A week, yeah.
So,
And there were like 200 engines in the canyon for 93. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. 200. Yeah, that number rings a bell.
but I
Yeah.
really appreciate what you were saying, that there's no one size fits all situation.
Not at all.
And every single time it's different.
And I also, I didn't, this is for the therapist or something, but, my first fire was 61. I was 10 years old. We left. My dad went back to the house and ran up a back dirt road to save the house, and he wouldn't let me come with him, and I've been pissed ever since. So I was going to get back at the universe or whatever by staying, so I'm now vindicated. So that entered into it too. Yeah.
My concern is that we can't get out because of traffic, so how can we prepare if we have to shelter in place?
Well, it's a really good question, and one I contemplate all the time. And there's all sorts of stuff online about that. The fire department puts stuff out. What they say is you should have a safe room in your house, or a room in your house. I will say one thing that these fire guys told us. They said, if you're home and a fire blows through, on a lot of wind, get in your house. You got air in there. You've got insulation. And pull a hose in with you, and if anything lights from radiant heat through the windows, put it out. And the fire will go by pretty quickly, and once it goes by, go outside and put out whatever fire you can. So that's what these guys that were there in 93 told us to do, and the story is roughly the same now.
Except for now, you want to make sure that there are things you can do in terms of making your space defensive.
Yes.
And you've got you want to have all those screens and those things up and keep the embers. The majority of the houses burned down from these wildfires from the embers coming into the house, and then they burn from the inside out.
They go into the vents.
Yes, they go to the vents. They don't burn from the
The vents, if you've got a house sitting here and there's a big wind blowing that way, there's high pressure on this side of the house, low pressure on that side. So if there's a vent here and a vent here, say for an underfloor area, then it's going to suck the embers in as the wind tries to go through. And so, you've got to treat those vents with the special screen and harden your house. There's all kinds of stuff from Fire Safe Count, or the RCD is doing that now. So.
Scott, I remember going through experiences when all this fire industry. It was a rainbow of colors, it was green with the
Yeah, yeah.
And they're in every garden, almost, as you drive through there. I just wonder if, just fires have gotten a lot worse, if fire departments would do that again, plant themselves, that many fire engines.
When I see fires on TV and stuff, you'll see that, structure protection. They'll go park, they'll park an engine in front of one house or maybe two houses close together, and they'll just station there to be ready. Okay, I think you've been waiting a while. Go ahead.
I didn't see any, was the Fernwood much of that fire?
The fire never really got into Fernwood per se. It was at the top, and it also went down through Cary Lane.
So that's, all right, that's the one.
So yeah, but it, the airdrops and the smoke jumper. What?
The fire truck came all the way from Oakland. They stayed at our house for 3 days.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't get out, they couldn't move, they couldn't do anything.
Right.
They have a big truck with water in it.
Well, fine.
One last thing, we live near the fire station, and so I took 2 of my 50 coffee makers there and 5 pounds of coffee, and they thanked me, and they said, with the amount of firefighters we have here, the 5 pounds of coffee will last about 20 minutes.
One thing that's important to note here too about, our firefighters, 69 local here, they know the roads and stuff, but in an event like Woolsey or 93, you don't get those guys. Those guys are somewhere else. And you're going to get, like we had an outfit from Seal Beach, and you had somebody from Oakland. And so, they're not going to be familiar with the area. So anyway, yes?
I wanted to say something about the 58, 59 New Year's Eve fire. Bert and Jan Moore built their house in 55, and they told me how, at that time, the firefighters were fighting the fire, and it got so hot that they covered themselves with a, fire-resistant blanket, and all 5 of them perished because the oxygen was taken up by the fire.
Yep.
And that's what happened. And to this day, on Dix Creek, behind my house on Baden Drive, where Fernwood becomes Tunica, I still find roots and parts of trees that were burned in that 58, 59 fire.
Well, I live just, you said Bainham. I live on Horseshoe. The end of Horseshoe is almost exactly across from Bainham. It's a house. It's not a street there. But and I too have burned stuff. I pulled out burned. Doug's grandfather saved my house in that fire because he was having a party and there was no water, like the old timer said. No water, no electricity. Yeah, cracked windows and probably cracked windows in my house too. But anyway, your grandfather told me that he saved my house by shaking up carbonated beverages and putting out the spot. But Doug, I've still got burned pieces that came out of the northeast corner of my house. I think I might have showed them to you.
And the other thing, Scott, is it wasn't Dorothy's house that burned down, it was her best friend Pat, who lived up on Saddle Peak, and she had a concrete house, but it had a couple of eaves, and an ember came flying from 2 miles away or something.
And got it.
And burned the house to the ground.
Well, I can go all night, but what do they want?
Their satellite, like communication, like they can
We could go forever. I mean,
and that way
it's up to you, whatever you want. I don't care. I'm fine with it.
communication. Would that happen in Topanga?
Mr. Woolley over there?
What?
You should ask the question and we can
Satellite
have
is
a group
part
solve
of
it
it,
by giving them
No, I know, but I'm talking about, since cell doesn't work, all of these things are out during a fire. Can you
He just lives
have
up
a
there
special
and
way,
he's
I don't know
concerned
how
that
these
it's,
things work,
one of
the
those
satellite,
very
where
narrow
you're able
streets.
to.
Just go in your car and listen to 10
That's what the
seconds.
dog.
No, I'm not talking about Susan, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the firefighters.
Maybe we just acknowledge him and ask him to say something, but she doesn't think we should give him the
To
mic.
be able to,
Okay.
like, wherever they go, way away.
He wants to take the mic. Who is he?
His name's Bert Woolley. His grandfather built the house I live in, so he lives on Paradise Lane, and he wants the county to vacate the road for street parking.
I'm losing the room here. Hey, I got a question for you guys. This is obviously a topic of high interest to everybody here, everybody in this area in Topanga, anybody in the Santa Monica Mountains. And I'm just wondering if it would make sense if we had another program dealing with fire. It wouldn't be a repeat of this, but we could have maybe the firefighters back, and we could do a Q&A or stories, or would that be of general interest to people?
I really think it's important.
What do you really think is important, Susan?
I really think it's
Really? Okay, well, go.
The demographic in Topanga has changed drastically.
Right.
And most people that need to know this shit aren't here.
Right.
All right? So, I've talked to Dennis about it.
So we're kind of preaching to the choir, maybe.
We're preaching to the choir here. We all know each other. We all know our stories, and we're learning new stories, and that's great. But there are several thousand new people that don't know shit about anything. They think they're in the city of LA.
Right.
And so, I'm sorry you didn't even hear.
I know a couple of them.
Thank you for being here. But basically,
But listen up.
I gotta tell you, having another preach to the choir thing, and I love this stuff.
Yeah.
But we need to have a way of getting the new people to understand that the roads are still narrow, there's only one way in and one way out, and you need to prepare and be prepared to, like you did, even though you stayed. There's a big gap now between our community and
I think that's the purview probably not of the Historical Society so much as the maybe RCD, maybe T-CEP, or maybe we connect. Yeah.
And you send out some mailers, and you talk
Yeah.
to the supervisor's office, and you say, hey, send out mailers and announcements, get involved.
Okay.
Because this education, I mean, in 93, we had horse trailers that were overturned on the boulevard.
Right.
I fixed all that.
I didn't see one overturned, but I saw one crossed up and blocking the road. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'm going to turn the mic over. Thank you guys. Have been great. I'll be here all week. No, I'm kidding. Going to turn it over back to our fearless leader, Ed, here, who has a few more things to say. Oh, all right. One more. Portia. Yeah.
And in addition to that, I wanted to share something about the most recent fire, over. Speak up. The most recent fire at Santa Maria Road. That was like right over our house, and I just want to commend that the response was like incredible. And, from the vantage point, there were, helicopter after helicopter after helicopter came and dumped the water. And, the response was amazing, and they did just an amazing job, and I just wanted to.
Well, great. And there has been some profound changes logistically and politically in the firefighting. I didn't want to get in, my thing is what did I do with 93? There's obviously an infinity more to say, but there's some big differences in how the firefighting is approached now as opposed to just a few years ago. So anyway. Ed, go for it.
Okay. We thank you to the community house for hosting us. We got to get out of here. Two final comments. The wonderful photo of the young man in front of the helicopter that Susan showed. That was Larry Anderson. Larry is right here. His father, Harvey Anderson, was captain of the Topanga Fire Station in 1937. He was promoted to battalion chief and then later a division chief of the western half of LA County before he retired in 1968. Thank you, Larry. One last comment from Bert, who's been waiting for 20 minutes to say one thing. Go ahead.
I've been struggling with LA County for years now because the agencies, the fire department, CHP, and sheriff's department all use the county assessor's map for information. The county assessor's map lists our right-of-ways as private streets. We have a letter from CHP that they have no jurisdiction on a private street. They also call it private property. The CHP letter also states that they cannot cite a vehicle for blocking our fire hydrant. So we have no guarantee of access for our only access roads. If there's anybody here from T-CEP or Topanga Town Council, I have a copy of the documentation that I've assembled, and we really need some help. During the Palisades fire, our zone, Zone 4, was under a mandatory evacuation order, and the neighbors right across the road, a 3-car couple, took their 2 best cars and split and left their least valuable car in the right-of-way, making it hard for fire trucks to get around. So if anybody from the county agencies think they can help, I've been up to the supervisor's office and there is no help coming from that. And this may be a problem throughout LA County. 2 CHP officers did come to talk about it, and they said the same situation, a similar situation exists in Twin Lakes of Porter Ranch. So it's not just us, it may be all of LA County which is not being protected by enforcement to keep their only access roads open. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you, everybody, for helping and setting up everything.